Roswell's Talk FM.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show, rolling through the Thursday edition of the program. Buck about to head to Chicago, so if you see a great head of hair and right. Accompanied by a nice young woman,
yes, that's right.
That probably is Mr. Sexton himself in Chicago for the first time. And Buck, I want to just mention this, by the way, as we close out the first hour. When we come back at the start of the second hour, I want to dive into this ridiculous whistleblower situation that is going on where parents were investigated for what they said at school boards and more. But this is pretty crazy. When you consider how aggressive, Buck, Merrick Garland, the AG, was responding to any minor criticism that ever existed, that was raised related to school board meetings, all these different things. He's been almost totally absent on this Supreme Court justice protest-related issue. And a lot of people have started asking, hey, given how many of these Supreme Court justices also live in Virginia, what's the situation with Glenn Youngkin? What's the situation given the fact there's a Republican governor there? Well, Glenn Youngkin is now having to speak out and say, hey, Merrick Garland, how about you enforce federal law and protect the homes of Supreme Court justices? Here is Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin right here at Cut 2 telling Merrick Garland, do your job.
Well, the statute is incredibly clear. It basically says if you are parading or picketing in order to try to influence a judge, then it's punishable with up to a year in prison. That sounds illegal to me. And I just ask the Attorney General to enforce the law that's on the books. If people want to demonstrate someplace off away from their home, that's their prerogative. But again, this is not a final ruling. It's a draft ruling.
Right.
And clearly, these demonstrations are being pulled together to try to influence the final outcome. And that is prohibited based on federal statute.
Just like at the southern border, when Democrats have politics that conflicts with the law, Clay, all of a sudden the law is nullified. It doesn't matter anymore. Now, I understand people will say, well, he's the governor, but he's referring to the federal statute, yes, which specifically goes after intimidation of a federal judge, in this case, a Supreme Court justice or justices. The state statute, which we've also looked at here on the show in Virginia, is more along the lines of like a local nuisance ordinance where you can't protest outside of someone's home. It doesn't have that judicial intimidation component. So it's probably, even if you enforced it, likely to be more along the lines of, a fine, maybe a bench ticket to appear before a judge. So look, I get it. People want him to take, because I've seen some conservatives who are upset at Youngkin over this one. They wanted him to take a stronger line on this one. But that doesn't mean we should forget that the Attorney General and the FBI could say, hey, knock this stuff off. We're gonna arrest people for judicial intimidation. That actually has some teeth. That actually is a serious statute.
And here is where I would just come down with the content neutral policies in place. What do we think Merrick Garland would do if, let's say, the Supreme Court had upheld the vaccine mandate of Joe Biden, forcing 84 million people who were employed to go get COVID shots, which, by the way, have minimal, at best, effectiveness for many people out there.
Okay, right? I'm waiting for my 7th, and then I know it's really going to kick in.
That's really where it's going to kick in. But, Buck, what do you think would happen if the liberal justices were being picketed and people were standing outside of their homes screaming at them in the way this would be a continuation of January 6th? It would be on the front page of every major newspaper, New York Times, Washington Post, and there would be a demand on MSNBC and on CNN that something be done to stop these protesters outside of the homes of these Supreme Court justices that are trying to intimidate these justices for their decision. And I feel like Merrick Garland might well act. I really do, because it would allow him to continue the right wing is out of control in this country. We have to use the Department of Justice to help to rein in their behavior. But yet nothing happening right now at all with the same thing for these conservative judges.
How does the deep state and how do Democrats use the power that they have within the federal bureaucracy, even under a Republican president, by the way, when they have political equities, you could say, at stake. Remember what they did? The special counsel, of course, largely independent of. I mean, it is within technically the control of the DOJ, but it's meant to be independent. Remember what they did to Roger Stone in his pajamas? They sent in a
every
Bin Laden style
in
raid.
America was there to watch.
I mean, they invited CNN to essentially live stream the arrest of Roger Stone. They sent a few dozen guys with long guns and flak vests in, and they made sure it was on TV. That is intimidation to show people, you step out of line, you do anything that we don't like and that has a political impact, we'll send men with guns to your home at 4 a.m. to humiliate you and to throw the cuffs on you, instead of just, what would have happened if they called Roger Stone and said, look, you need to surrender yourself to the U.S. Attorney's Office or, to an AUSA tomorrow? He would have been there. But they made an arrest to make a point, and they did it in a way meant to humiliate, degrade, and threaten. That's how the Democrats play the game. Now, on the other side of it, are they going to enforce a statute against clear judicial intimidation with this issue at stake? No, and I'll tell you, I think there's some Democrats who were, I think Chuck Schumer feels like if he doesn't sound like a wacko on this one and far leftist and everything else, they'll be picketing outside his home next. So,
well, he's claiming that they already are, right? Did you hear his answer for why he didn't have a problem with it? Now, to be fair, Dick Durbin, one of the top Democrats in the Senate, said no, they shouldn't be protesting outside a Supreme Court justice. But Schumer said, Buck, well, they already do it 3 or 4 days a week outside of my own home. And I'm thinking to myself, who in the world is protesting Chuck Schumer? Maybe left-wingers for some
apparently
reason?
I'm late on the uptake here. Apparently they're already there protesting Schumer. But that's the point, is that the wacko left here is they're pulling all the levers they can on this issue, all over the place. By the way, you see PETA? PETA came at me yesterday for my joke about the fake milk.
What? The number of people who get upset about your milk take,
I love it,
is really off the
Bring it,
charts.
Commies. They have no sense of humor. That's why it's great. I love it.
I was catching up. I caught up with Ozark. I finished the whole show.
Oh, yeah? How's it going?
It's an interesting ending. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but that's a pretty good Netflix program. So, I officially was catching up on that. So I missed a little bit of the news last night. I didn't see PETA coming after you.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton on the front lines of truth.
This is Roswell's Talk FM 106.5.
New numbers are in, and it's great to see. Pure Talk saving families even more money than we previously thought. If you're still with Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, your family could be saving over $900 a year.
And with Pure Talk, you don't have to compromise. You don't have to compromise coverage with America's most reliable 5G network. You don't compromise on price or values. Choose the plan that's right for you. You'll be supporting a company whose customer service is right here in the U.S. and whose CEO proudly served our country.
Remember, you keep your cell phone and your cell phone number when you make the switch. Pure Talk offers unlimited talk, text, and 6 gigs of data for just $30 a month.
So from your cell phone, dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. You can be switched over to Pure Talk service in less than 10 minutes. Dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck. That's pound 250, say Clay and Buck.
Here at Rough Greens, we believe that life is better with a dog. They walk with you, they play with you, they're always there for you, and we know you want to give your furry friend the best life possible. There's just one problem. Dog food is dead food. The good news is that now you don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Simply add a scoop of Rough Greens, and you've just given your dog the most powerful all-natural dog nutrition available anywhere. Rough Greens is packed with omega oils, 20 essential vitamins and minerals, 15 powerful probiotics, 20 digestive enzymes, and tons of antioxidants, and all with a flavor that's going to have them licking the bottom of the bowl. In fact, we're so confident that your dog will love Rough Greens that we're going to let them try it before you buy it. Free. Just cover the shipping. Get your free bag of Rough Greens today at roughgreens.com. That's RUFF greens.com. Your dog trusts you. you can trust Rough Green.
It's time for Talktivities on 106.5 Roswell's Talk FM. Do you have an item for Talktivities? Email it to calendar@pvbcradio.com.
The Nerd Overachiever Teach Yourself Homeschool Scholarship is over $1,500 worth of books and equipment. Applicants must be Chaves County residents, ages 15, 16, or 17, and planning to be homeschooled in the 22-23 school year. Deadline to apply is May 25th. Informational and application brochures can be picked up at the Roswell Chamber, the Dexter Library, or Hagerman Town Hall. Small non-farm businesses in 33 New Mexico counties are now eligible to apply for low-interest federal disaster loans from the U.S. Small Business Administration caused by drought that began November 1st of 2021. Primary New Mexico counties include Chaves, Eddy, and Lee. Applicants may apply online at disasterloanassistance.sba.gov.
If you have an item for Talktivities, email it to calendar@pvbcradio.com. That's calendar@pvbcradio.com.
Your home for Kim Commando in Roswell. 106.5 Roswell's Talk FM, KEND, Roswell, New Mexico.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. A Labor Department report unexpectedly showed a slight increase in first-time claims for U.S. unemployment benefits in the week ending May 7th. More from Bernie Bennett.
The Labor Department said initial jobless claims crept up to 203,000, an increase of 1,000 from the previous week's revised level of 202,000. The uptick surprised economists who had expected jobless claims to dip to 195,000 from the 200,000 originally reported for the previous week. The report showed the less volatile 4-week moving average also edged up to 192,750, an increase of 4,250 from the previous week's revised average of 188,500. Bernie Bennett in Washington.
And there were higher numbers in another report. Washington correspondent Ben Thomas reports the Labor Department's latest price report suggests high inflation is going to remain a burden in the months ahead.
The Labor Department's Producer Price Index measures inflation before it reaches consumers. April's figure was up 0.5% from March and 11% from April of last year. However, both figures were less than the previous report. A sign price increases may be moderating is still painfully high.
Also at townhall.com, President Biden telling world leaders to remain vigilant against COVID-19. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
During the second global coronavirus summit, the president called on nations to renew their commitment to attack the virus. He told world leaders this pandemic isn't over. The virtual meeting came as Mr. Biden marked 1 million COVID-19 deaths in the United States. He said it was a tragic milestone and issued a proclamation directing U.S. flags be flown at half-staff to honor the dead. Greg Clugston, Washington.
Another roller coaster on Wall Street. The Dow is down 232 points, and the NASDAQ is now 16 points lower. More at townhall.com.
Don't miss 2,000 Mules, the new movie from Dinesh D'Souza.
What you're about to see is disturbing.
The truth behind the 2020 election conspiracy.
This mule went across 6 counties to 27 different drop boxes. In no way is that legal.
See the evidence for yourself.
No one has more data than we do.
What you showed is frightening.
This is organized crime.
2,000 Mules. Watch it or buy it today at salemnow.com. That's salemnow.com. Sponsored by Salem Media Group.
If you're with Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, join the flood of people switching to Pure Talk. The average family saves over $800 a year by switching. Get unlimited talk, text, and 6 gigs of data for just $30 a month. Or if you still want unlimited data, you can get that and still save a fortune. Go to puretalk.com, type in your address to find the coverage at your home, then enter promo code HALF-OFF, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. That's puretalk.com, promo code HALF-OFF.
In Southern California, a wildfire erupted Wednesday in the coastal community of Laguna Niguel and burned more than 20 homes, many of them multi-million-dollar mansions. No injuries reported. Resident Lynn Morey, who had to evacuate, said she was not sure of the status of her home.
It's not looking good. Every other house is on fire on one side of the street, and then it jumped across the street and started burning other houses, and our house could be on fire. I don't know. I was not able to get inside and get any of our belongings, but it could be on fire.
Maury spoke with ABC 7. Meanwhile, more people in northern New Mexico being warned they might have to flee as the largest wildfire burning in the U.S. heads towards mountain resort towns now. Our officials said at a briefing Wednesday night that the fastest moving flames were heading further northeast. That would be away from the area's biggest population center in Taos. Breaking news at townhall.com. The race to be the next leader of the Republican Study Committee, the largest conservative caucus in the House, is heating up now with two official contenders starting to take their campaigns public.
Representative Kevin Hern of Oklahoma and Representative Kat Cammack of Florida are publicly vying to replace outgoing term limited chairman Jim Banks as head of the nearly 50-year-old conservative caucus, which has major influence over House Republican policy. In an interview, Hern staked his campaign on a commitment to principled policy and pointed to his decades of experience in business, while Cammack focused on elevating the RSC's profile in members' districts and advocating bringing in a new generation of leadership to the table. Bernie Bennett, Washington.
A nearly $1 billion tentative settlement has been reached in a class action lawsuit brought by families of victims and survivors of last June's condominium collapse in Surfside, Florida. At least 98 people were killed. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Up your spotting game with the help of Zia Guns USA in Roswell. Zia Guns USA is now an authorized full-line Tacticam dealer. The same scopes, cameras, and spotting equipment that the big boys use on TV. So now you can capture your hunt like never before. Zia Guns USA in Roswell also has a new shipment of knives by Benchmade and Case. Come check out the amazing selection for yourself. Take your hunt to the next level with Zia Guns USA in Roswell. Closed on Saturdays but open on Sundays at 1907 North Main in Roswell.
I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton with your Pecos Valley weather. We have dry air back in place over eastern New Mexico, and that'll keep things sunny today, and the temperatures will be going up quite a bit. We'll be in the upper 90s on the afternoon high and a little bit breezy later on in the day. Low 50s and clear for the overnight hours, and then we're looking at mid 90s for the high on Friday and sunny, back to the upper 90s Saturday and Sunday. That's your latest forecast. I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us, rolling through the Thursday edition of the program. And yesterday we brought you the news that the Democrat attempt to enshrine Roe v. Wade in a Senate vote had failed because Joe Manchin bailed on his Democrat colleagues. And so by a 51-49 vote, that attempt by Chuck Schumer failed. But as a part of that failure, we're already starting to see the argument now be made, Buck, of this is not only about abortion, it's going to spread beyond abortion. And during the commercial break, I was reading the Washington Post. They are doing direct agenda-based journalism. Buck, they have got Washington Post reporters obsessively calling every video game company to find out what their policy is going to be, what their statement is going to be in the event that Roe v. Wade is overturned. This, of course, is not journalism. It's a pressure-mounted campaign to try to get all of these companies to issue woke statements relating to abortion. Meanwhile, so far, most companies seem to be avoiding making these comments. And what is this telling us? What are we learning from this obsession coming from the leak from Justice Alito's potential opinion? Remember, it still hasn't even occurred. Potential opinion overturning it. It's that Roe v. Wade by itself isn't enough. There has to be more associated with it. So this was Chuck Schumer after the Senate failed to advance what they were calling the Women's Health Protection Act. Here in Cut 9, he says and follows along what we talked about yesterday, the slippery slope argument of contraception is next. Listen to Schumer's litany of what's to come in the wake of this opinion.
The vote we just took makes crystal clear the contrast between the parties as we approach the midterm elections. Vote, elect more pro-choice Democrats if you want to see a woman have control over her own body. Elect more pro-choice Democrats if you want to protect a woman's freedom and right to choose. Elect more MAGA Republicans if you want to see a nationwide ban on abortion. If you want to see doctors and women arrested. If you want to see no exceptions for rape or incest.
So far, that has not come to fruition anywhere, right? That's the slippery slope argument. But, Buck, what you're seeing actually is that Democrats have enshrined that they believe abortion should be legal up to and including the 9th month of pregnancy, which is a radical proposition that is overwhelmingly rejected by the vast majority of the American public. But this campaign is underway. This Washington Post journalism, I'm putting it in a quotation mark, of calling a company and wanting to know what they're going to potentially be doing, and then writing about a failure to act, which is what they did in the newspaper, is advocacy, direct and straightforward. And this is all part of the campaign that is underway to define this Alito opinion.
I think they're just trying to mobilize corporate America the way that they did with BLM, which we just talked about in the last hour. They're expecting the same genuflection and begging for forgiveness from corporate America. Now, and then there's also a lot in corporate America who they're just open advocates for this, a lot of major companies. But the difference is with BLM in the initial days, I think there was a bit of there was a moral panic, but there was also a sense of, well, maybe this is a time for a conversation. Half the country doesn't want to have a conversation about whether or not women should be able to abort babies for all 9 months of a pregnancy. They want this to stop. They've wanted this to stop for a long time. They've wanted this to stop for decades. They've set up organizations. They've raised a lot of money. They've been engaged in advocacy. They've been helping women who are unplanned pregnancy, setting up unplanned pregnancy centers for women to have babies. I mean, there's been a lot that's been going on here. So this isn't just one side gets to have their argument and no one else is going to stand athwart them and say, well, hold on a second, as that was the case. Remember with BLM, nobody, I mean, there are very few people who were willing to say early on, I will say that I was among them, that this was not going to help. This was a bad idea. Yeah. This is rooted in lies. On this issue, I think that they underestimate the strength and the and the solidity. Is that a word? I think it's a word, of the pro-life movement and how it's been waiting for this moment in time to now take it to the states. You notice the panic among the Democrats is, oh my gosh, what if people can vote on this?
Yeah.
What if states actually have to deal with the intricacies and the gray areas and the differences in opinion? The Democrats need this cover, this fig leaf, this fiction of Roe, and now they want it at a federal level. Think about how obtuse this thinking is as well. When Republicans come into a majority, they can just remove. You're going to have a federal law that is saying you have this right, no, you don't have this right. That's going to ping pong back and forth depending on who's in charge. No, states make very clear determinations. Somehow, Clay, we've lived in a world where I go in and I go buy a handgun in the state of Texas and I'm enjoying my Second Amendment rights. I walk around the streets with a handgun in New York that I haven't run through their special 6-month-long anti-gun, get fingerprinted and treated like a criminal before you've done anything system. They're going to lock me up for 3 years like I'm a bad person. They're violating my constitutional rights, but we live with all kinds of differences among the states. That's where this is heading, and that's where it should have been all along. And I just think the Democrats know that their arguments are weak, and there's also a sense this is not going to be the mobilization. Yeah, of course, if you're left-wing. The people that are outraged about this, the blue-haired, nose-ringed, shrieking banshees outside of Kavanaugh's house and outside of Roberts' house, they were all voting Democrat anyway, Clay. I really don't. Now, there will be some people that maybe see that things you've been talking about, the emails that say, oh, it's going to go after.
We're going to take away your contraceptive rights. We're going to take away.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think there'll also be a lot of people who say, hold on a second. Chuck Schumer really believes, and we're not making it up, he does. And Beto O'Rourke and what's the senator, Tim Ryan, would be senator from Ohio. 9 months, you don't want to have a baby anymore, doctors should take it out of you and kill the baby. That is what the Democrats believe. People are going to realize what that actually means, too.
No doubt. And I think that's important to emphasize what actually was voted on. There is a totalitarian nature in pro-choice abortion rights arguments that now requires, Buck, lest you offend them, that you support abortion all the way up to the 9th month of pregnancy. That is what they believe. That is what they voted on yesterday. That's what 49 Democrats affixed their name to. What's interesting to me associated with that is the pro-life movement actually has a variety of different perspectives within it, right? Some people out there do believe that there shouldn't be any exemptions at all. That's your right to have that opinion, right? For religious-based reasons, whatever they may be. Other people, and I would put myself in this category, believe that contraception should be widely available, and some people disagree with that, but I'm in that category. In terms of what the line should be for rape, incest, for how many weeks abortions should be available, if at all. There's a wide variety of perspectives. The reason why I bring this up is I think there is a tendency to treat pro-choice people in the media, certainly, as if they are more of a reasonable group. Think about this. 9-month pregnancy abortions, that is murder. That is now the position of the Democrat Party. And it is one that if you are running, if J.D. Vance is running up against Tim Ryan in Ohio, Tim Ryan is trying to say, hey, I'm a moderate for the Democrat Party running in the state of Ohio. It ain't moderate, Buck, to believe that a 9-month pregnant woman can decide to do away with her abortion. Yeah. And that needs to be, you need to get everybody on the record in the midterms who is out there. Do you support a woman's right to have an abortion in the 9th month? Because you know what? If that woman was shot and the baby died, most of our criminal statutes would call that a double murder.
As they well
almost
should.
Everywhere out there.
And as you're pointing out, I mean, we need to take a moment here and really think about this as a country. Prominent Democrats, really the most powerful Democrats in the country, are arguing for a legal right to what is obvious infanticide.
Yes.
Full stop.
9-month babies, they could be born at any moment. Anybody who's gone through a pregnancy, has had a baby, knows you get to 7, 8, 9 months. You get to 9 months, that baby can come at any moment.
Full-on infanticide, pretending it's a constitutional right, pretending it's a moral right, pretending this is somehow about women controlling their bodies. They aren't saying, hold on, let's have a national conversation about difficult things. They're advocating for savagery. Full-on savagery. That is what they're actually publicly demanding right now. Something that we would have, if you're looking at a previous society, I think I mentioned this before, the Aztecs, a pre-modern, pre-discovery by the West society that used to have massive human sacrifice. And we look at that, we say, well, that's so awful. They thought they had some reason for that, whether it was to appease some gods or whatever. Our reason is effectively, according to Democrats, convenience. Yeah. It is inconvenient. You've had Janet Yellen say, hey, it's really, we need to make sure people can abort babies because babies are expensive and it's hard and it's particularly difficult for low income and minority communities. That's an immoral position she's advocating for. I mean, people's jaws should be dropping. I do think we need to have something of a moral awakening in this country. We want to have a conversation about, when does life begin and what legal protections for, week 1 and week 4. That is, I think, going to happen, and that should happen. At a political level, that should be something that goes on. If we can't agree that a baby's a baby at 9 months, what can we agree on?
Think about this analogy, Buck. Woman goes into the hospital, headed to a hospital at 9 months pregnant. Man, before she can go into the hospital, jumps out and pummels her in her stomach, leading for her to lose a baby. That's a vile, awful, unbelievable crime to be committed. And most people would say that man should go